to the Aftershock postgame show. This is our first postgame show of 2024. I'm Alex Morgan. I'm here with Jamon Moore. We are in Coachella Valley at the Coachella Valley Invitational for the San Jose Earthquakes preseason camp. The Earthquakes just lost 1-0 to Charlotte FC. That's their second game at this tournament. They tied New York City FC 2-2 earlier this week. Jamon, what were your takeaways on this one? We got to see this team trot out for the first time this season. We didn't get to see some of the new guys we were hoping to because of visa issues, but still a lot to take away from this game, no?
Yeah, I think if you're going to take any one thing away, it's that they looked much more defensively solid at this point of the preseason than they did even one more game into the preseason, one more week into the preseason last season. That's really, really important because it shows, as Lucci kind of described to us yesterday, and our patrons will get a chance to listen to that or watch actually the Lucci Gonzalez interview later today. What's really important is that now in preseason 2, it's a much different type of preseason from a coaching perspective. You're no longer instructing and telling people what you want. Instead, players are competing already knowing what you want. That's a huge distinction and a big difference. And I think you saw it at least in the first half today. Now, of course, there's the goal that was given up and, Rodriguez could have played it better and you can talk about that kind of things. But first off, it's preseason. Secondly, it's really windy out here and the balls were doing funny stuff. Anything that got in the air was getting hung up, getting overblown and underblown, and depend on, the wind and the swirl and anything else going on at the same time. So I don't read too much into those kinds of things because in MLS stadiums, you don't tend to get that type of wind effect. But at the same time, you saw pretty much the defense control things in the first half, particularly in the second half. Really, the Quakes just kind of held the ball. There wasn't much pressing going on, and it was a lot of possession. But, there was exciting moments, interesting moments. Christian Espinoza throwing the ball, off the back of a defender and then running in for a cutback attempt. Oscar Verhoeven's pass in the first half was a beaut of a pass, and Jack Skane just bedazzled the defender, being able to figure out what he was going to do there. They almost got a goal. Ball went off the post off of Benji Buchanan's shot, if I remember right. But it was an interesting first half. Second half, a lot less interesting, but I think important time to extend the minutes of some players. Some players going 90 today, and other players, getting a chance to make a case for themselves. And the people we didn't see, as you mentioned, the new international players, but we'll get into that as we talk why that's important for today's game.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the competition that's happening on the field. I think you saw today where that competition is. You saw at right back 3 different players get in. You had Carlos Acapo play the first 30 minutes, then you had Oscar Verhoeven play the second 30 minutes, then you had Tommy Thompson play the last 30 minutes. You saw Preston Judd get up top for the second half. He'll be competing with Jeremy Abobasi.
And get a yellow card. We saw he's feisty.
He's feisty, and he's competing with Jeremy Abobasi for that number 9 role. You saw Alfredo Morales play in the middle, played really strong, had a great performance there.
Some people didn't like it, though. We got some fan comments that didn't care for Morales' performance today.
Which is surprising to me, given that I think he came into that game and he was able to make kind of incisive passes through the middle and play through the middle better than the Quakes were able to do in the first half. If there's any frustration that I had about the way the Quakes were playing in the first half, is that they weren't able to build the ball through the middle and get in behind. The only way they were able to attack is down the wings. You had Oscar Verhoeven play some good balls in behind. You had a Capo running in behind, but they weren't playing through the middle in the way that I thought I was hoping they would. And I think there's still a little bit of uncertainty about Jack Skane at that number 10. You saw him starting in the number 10 position today with the opportunity to make that his own position. The Quakes haven't signed a DP number 10, a DP attacking midfielder. They're in the market for it. And right now, that's his role, and he needs to stake a claim to it. And I think there was a little bit of disconnect. I like the way that he was pressing the back line. I like the way that he was making runs in behind. But it felt sometimes that there was still an empty pocket in there for a player who's going to play in those tight spaces and find balls in behind. We saw him get in that spot a couple of times, but I don't think he was decisive enough. I think too often he was trying to defer back to Jackson Ewell, lay the ball off to Jackson Ewell, and I think Ewell ended up playing most of the creative role in the midfield
in the second half,
in the first half, in both halves. And I think there's room still for another number 10.
Oh,
to
for
do
sure.
that. I don't think we've seen the best configuration of this.
No, I don't think like necessarily everything exists. We talked with Lucci about this yesterday. There are elements of what they want at that position that Jack Skane has. There are elements of what they want in that position that Nico Shakiris has. And Shakiris not available for the game today as well, nursing a knock also. So, you know, there's elements of that in the players that they've identified that can fit into that spot for the time being. But I think the subtext there is that there's not one player that yet has all the attributes. I think what you see with Jack is Jack's got a very good pressing ability, something they had with Montero, and something that Lucci highly values. In fact, we talked to Jack a little bit in our interview with him, which also got released this morning. Is getting released at 4 o'clock today. Sorry, you'll see it at 4 o'clock today. And in that interview, we talked to him, and he talked about the importance of pressing and his role in pressing within Lucci's system. And so there's the element of that is like extremely important to what they were trying to do. But at the same time, sometimes when they press, and you noted this, Alex, and so I'll let you kind of speak to it. Sometimes when they're pressing, it's leaving certain types of gaps as well. And maybe the tracking back is not what it needs to be at this point in those situations. Maybe players need to pinch in certain situations a little quicker. So again, preseason, you know, you want to give time to be able to work those things out a little bit more and have players to get fitness for recovery. But, you know, if you're going to press in a very strong way, you can't be leaving some of the gaps they were leaving in the first half.
Well, you have to leave gaps, because what they did was they had Jack Skane sitting on the second center back. They had him and Jeremy Bobasi both marking the center backs, which means somewhere in the midfield there's going to be an open man, and the goal is to kind of zonally cover that, or have enough cover to prevent the ball from going there. I think Charlotte did a really good job of finding that open man. They were playing the balls into the forwards and into the wingers, and then getting layoffs into the kind of open attacking midfielder, and were able to break out of the press quite well. San Jose's back line, for the most part, cleaned up and did a good job. I thought Tanner Beeson and Rodriguez looked pretty good today for the most part. Bruno Wilson is another player we're excited to see play back there, but it's good to know that Tanner Beeson and Rodriguez still have a solid partnership back there, because they may well be the players starting on opening day. So the back line was good, but I think that the Quakes still have room to improve that press, to make sure that they're not letting those spaces get exploited in the midfield. I still feel like, and I want to run this by you, Jamon, because it's the first preseason game we've seen. I don't want to be overly critical, but I still feel like I was seeing some of the same issues that we saw in 2023. I still feel like in the first half in that build-up, they were overly dependent, overly reliant on the right side of the field. Most things were going through Christian Espinosa and Carlos Acapo. I don't think Benji Kikanovic was able to get involved enough on the left side. I don't think he had a particularly strong performance in this one. Paul Marie, usually a guy who loves to get in on the overlap, get forward up the field. He scored a great goal against New York City FC. I don't think once he got the ball in the attacking half of the field, looking dangerous going down that left side. So that was one of the kind of frustrations from 2023 that we saw today. Obviously, the kind of gap in number 10 is another thing. And a part of me wishes that we were able to see those new players. A part of me thinks that if Amal Pellegrino, the new signing from Norway, had been able to start on the left side, that would have been more balanced. That would have given the Quakes a different look on the left side. A part of me thinks if Bruno Wilson were at center back, we know he's a guy who can pass the ball and has really good distribution. His stats on that front are really strong. The Quakes would have been able to find more of those through balls through the midfield and connect them. So a part of me thinks this team still has another gear in them that they can access. The reason, from what we know, that those players weren't able to play today is because they did not yet have their visas. Today's game was streamed, so they can't be playing a live streamed game without their visas. So that's why we didn't get to see them today. And the hope is that they will be ready by the day one home opener, season opener, to be able to play by then. But that's still in the works.
Yeah, we learned a bit more about how P1 visas work before the game. And one of the things that's really important is, so if you saw the press releases, you just go back to the press releases, they state this very specifically. Each one of these press releases that came out it says pending receipt of ITC, or the International Transfer Certificate, and P1 visa. And so the players are not allowed to play for a team. You can't play in a game unless those two things are taken care of. Well, in order to do the P1 visa, it actually literally takes, I kid you not, an act of Congress. An actual act of Congress. And what we mean by that is for players who qualify, well, first off, professional sports players in the U.S. are very accepted as P1 visa players. That includes every player in MLS, every player in every other American sports league is covered under that. In order to get those timed so that the player can go back to their country and then be able to come back in a very short turnaround, you actually need someone in Congress to request it, that someone gets the special privilege to be able to fast track, to be able to just go there for a day to their country and then turn around and come back. So put yourself in the position of Amal Pellegrino going all the way to Norway, or Bruno Wilson going all the way back to Portugal, or Vitor Costa, the same thing. Like, they're going to have to basically travel all the way there, spend a day there, get their P1 visa processed because someone basically got them special permission to move to the front of the line due to American relations with those countries, and then they turn around and come back. It's actually quite an interesting process. That is why you did not see the international players today, is because that has to happen before they're allowed to actually step onto the field and play a game for the San Jose Earthquakes or whatever team that they are in.
So what you're saying is that in the next elections, the Quakes fans need to take that into account when
Absolutely.
they're casting their votes,
when you vote,
whether they will.
When you vote, the important thing is how fast will your congressman process the P1 visa. Make sure you ask your the people running for Congress to replace Dianne Feinstein, what exactly they want to do. So anyway, we just thought it was very interesting insight. I hope the people who shared it with us don't mind that we shared it, because I do think it's interesting. It's important for the fans to know, like, hey, you acquired all these players. Why aren't they playing for you? And to be able, just to give you a little bit of insight as to why they're not actually stepping onto the pitch. Now, that said, there's additional scrimmage right now. There was no mix zone. There was originally supposed to be a mix zone where we were going to get to talk to Lucci and a player, and that actually got canceled because some of the players are going to play another 30 minutes. Our guess is that the international players will get to play in a side scrimmage for an additional 30 minutes because that's not streamed. And we're guessing. We don't know that for sure. So anyone who's trying to hold this against them for playing in these scrimmages or anything like that, we don't actually know that. But anyway, we thought that it would be useful for everyone to kind of know how that process works a bit, because we learned from asking the questions and then trying to understand that process a bit more ourselves.
And we did get some insight into the new players. Me and Jamon were at training yesterday. We were able to speak to Bruno Wilson, the new center back from Portugal, yesterday. That's one of a series of interviews we conducted. Those are available now for our patrons. So if you sign up for the Patreon, you will get link access to all of those interviews. They will be published in the coming week, I think, for the general public. But we had long conversations with them about how they see their role in this team. For Bruno specifically, the thing he was saying is that he is going to be a complement to Rodriguez in center back. Rodriguez likes to run with the ball, push the ball forward. He plays a little bit more defensively and cover, and maybe offer a little bit more in terms of the passing out of the back instead of the dribbling out of the back. So I think that that's something that the Quakes could have benefited from today. Vitor obviously is going to add some depth at left back and challenge for that left back position. Pellegrino in the left wing offers another kind of option up there. And the thing that Jamon and I were noticing just immediately was how different he is from any of the other options the Quakes have had in the left wing position for the last few years.
Just a completely different player.
Cade Cowell is powerful.
Stands out too. He's so
pacey,
skinny and tall, and he just stands out immediately.
Even Benji Lukanovic, powerful, pacey, likes to take guys on. That's not the kind of player that Amal Pellegrino is. He likes to find the spaces. He likes to drop centrally a little bit more. He's not going to be taking guys on one-on-one as frequently. He's very sneaky.
He tries to be. He's a tall guy. You go like, how did this guy hide? Maybe it's because he's thin. Maybe it's like he can hide behind somebody who's wider or whatever. But he kind of slides into space, and he's kind of positioned. And he put a ball in the box. He put it over the goal. To be quite honest, he smashed it. but it went over the net. But it was like one of those situations where he was kind of like hoping nobody noticed him, and he kind of just got into position, was able to find a ball that was coming across the box. I think that's quite interesting. It's just quite different than what the Quakes have had in that position. And if nothing else, I hope it goes really well. Yeah, Pellegrino's 6'3". Thank you there for that, Arvi. Pellegrino's being 6'3", I think it's just going to be just something different, and I think that's good because one of the things that we used to talk about with Cade and Benji is it was a lot of the same, right? Like, oh well, whether it's one or it's the other, like they kind of have a lot of the sameness to them, and I think like this is going to be a quite different look to have Pellegrino and maybe Benji, and maybe there's going to be some competition for a little bit until Pellegrino comes up to speed and figures it out a little bit, but. For me, and I think that's what Lucci wants too. Lucci wants options. He wants competition. He wants every competition. He wants every position. There's only like 4 positions that seem like locked in where I don't think there's real competition.
Well, you saw guys go full 90s today.
Yeah, you saw the full 90s, right? It's Espinoza, it's Rodriguez, it's Jackson Ewell, and it's Danielle. I think those are your locked-in 4 positions. I think every other position on the field, and I would even say, Bobasi and Judd, there's a competition there, even though Bobasi's going to have the edge. Obviously, you're bringing these players in. Bruno Wilson, you want to see him step in quickly. You want to see Pellegrino step in quickly. But I think what they think is we've got competition. We've got depth. We've got the ability to go an entire season now and not tire down. And we can do Leagues Cup and not tire down. We can do Open Cup if we need to, if depends on whatever comes up, that whole mess, and not tire down. And I think like that's what they're aiming for is improve the top, but raise the floor as well. Expect some of the young guys like Verhoeven, maybe to step up. Nico, when he's going to be healthy again, step up. Like we want to see these young guys step up, but we also want to create real competition, sometimes 3 deep at different positions. Verhoeven might be the 3rd string.
He could be the 2nd string.
And he had the best pass of the game today, which is crazy because he's a kid, right? But he's that good already. He has the ability to step in, but the depth chart might show him as the 3rd string outside back.
And I want to talk about Verhoeven a little bit. I also want to talk about Judd a little bit. I want to move quickly past the first half because I think the first half felt like the 2023 San Jose Earthquakes is what it felt like. Because it was largely the same guys, because they weren't able to play those new additions. You weren't able to see what new this team has to offer going forward. And I think they struggled going forward. I think a lot of the fans were upset because they didn't really record a shot on target. Benji Gacanovic had one that hit the crossbar, and that was the closest the Quakes got.
Well, that was from the Verhoeven pass, and a nifty little move by Jack to kind of free himself to make the pass there. And that was probably the nicest play.
And that was Verhoeven. That was created by Verhoeven.
By Verhoeven after the sub for Acapo. By the way, I think there was a question earlier. I just want to address it about the substitution. So that was a planned substitution. I think they're managing Acapo's minutes coming back from AFCON, getting him back integrated again. But also they want to give the other players a chance to show what they can do. They want to give Tommy some time. They want to give Verhoeven some time. That was all planned today.
Yeah, and Verhoeven had started in the game against New York City FC, partly because Acapo was coming back from AFCON, so they wanted to reintegrate him into the squad. But he's a guy who I could see coming off the bench quite frequently this season for the Quakes. If he can play those balls in behind, as Arfi's saying, he's deceptively good at passing. If he can offer that extra, bit of creativity going forward, I can easily see him being one of the first guys off the bench this season. He's only 17 years old, I believe, but physically, it feels like he's ready. He was able to keep up with the pace. He was able to get in and challenge some aerial balls. So it feels like he's ready. It feels like this is the year that we will probably see Oscar Verhoeven in the first team getting real MLS minutes.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm concerned that bringing in Vitor Costa from the outside, not exactly sure how he's is he going to be the starter on the left? Day one, is there going to be real competition between him and Paul Marie? Kind of, you hope that doesn't put kind of Verhoeven on the outside looking in. But look, every day in practice, if Verhoeven is now stepping up to practice with the first team while he gets some game time for Quakes too, but he's getting that first team time every day, he'll get seen, and they will figure out, it might take a little while to confirm, what the capabilities are. But if he's got the ability, I think it would be really interesting to see him start to pick up more and more minutes as the season goes on. Those young legs, I think, are really important in order to really kind of, extend the entire season the way that they need to do in order to get to the playoffs and not be out of gas.
It feels like Verhoeven is in a similar place that Nico Shakiris was in at this stage last season. Nico Shakiris was also getting his some of his first minutes for the first team in this preseason tournament at Coachella. He suffered an injury actually around this time last year that prevented him from getting in the starting lineup. But in terms of their development, it feels like this is the place where they're able to cement their spot on the first team roster and make a case for being in those match day squads for the Earthquakes.
I thought was interesting in the second half, and you mentioned that in the first half it seemed like they were very focused on the right side of the pitch, and I agree that's true in the first half. I felt on the second half, particularly toward the middle part of the second half, we were seeing a lot more on the left. And what changed is when they brought on Alfredo Morales and they went basically to a double pivot. At that point, Jackson Yule stepped forward and they pushed Jack out to the wing, because we all know he can also play, on the wing as well. And he was a winger in college, and then Matthias turned him into a central midfielder, and he loves central midfielder. He credits Matthias for how he learned how to become a central midfielder. He thinks he became a central midfielder,
a 10
basically.
Specifically.
A 10 specifically. And, out of that experience with Matthias, but he hasn't forgotten how to play on the wing. In fact, he scored off the wing last year in the Cali Classico, right? So I thought when it got interesting on the left was when he and Jackson were working together on the left side. And then I think Paul Marie, if I recall right, was still in the game at that point. So then you had Marie, Jackson, and Skane on that left side. I thought it was actually kind of interesting. There's a couple penalty shouts in there. I think Marie had a potential. His arm was out a little bit, but if he had kept his arm down, he would have probably gotten cleared out and probably could have drawn a penalty there. So there's some interesting things that I thought did come from that left side in the second half.
And there was one element of the conditions here today that I want to mention. You can probably see it because my hair is flying around, our credentials are flying around. One of the things that inhibited San Jose's wing play is that you can't send diagonal balls in this wind. Those diagonal balls are either going way too long and running at the end of the pitch or getting caught up in the air and going nowhere. So I think to the extent that they were structured with Alfredo Morales, it was that. And it was hard to get those diagonal switches, even though the Quakes sometimes had space on that left side to do so.
So let's talk about this goalkeeper situation. It really, thanks for setting us up, Tyler, because we did want to talk about it. So the really, I think, interesting thing we learned yesterday is that last season when JT went down, particularly, and even before that, they just felt thin in the goalkeeper core, that they were asking a lot of the goalkeepers. So keep in mind, there's the games, right? And Danielle is going to start the vast majority of those games. And then there's Quakes 2 games, right? And
Emmy was playing.
And Emmy would be covering those games. And so it kind of felt like, well, this team used to be 3 keepers back in the day, and now there's 2 teams, but there's still only 3 keepers. Really? I mean, yes, you're also getting Eric De La Cerda, I think, was getting some time at Quakes 2. And he had played at Reno for Ian. So, of course, that was a natural player to put in that spot. But I don't think there's any thought that, Eric De La Cerda was going to, at some point, be the starting, no offense to Eric, he's a hard worker, but he's never going to be the starting, goalkeeper for the San Jose Earthquakes at some point. Now, legitimately, all 4 goalkeepers that they've got, you could say they all have a path to becoming the number 1 keeper for the San Jose Earthquakes. And, to be fair to William Yarborough here, he said on Ted Ramey's show, he hopes he's only here for a year and JT steps back in. So let's assume that even that happens. But either way, all 4 of these players have the ability, if they needed to step in and start a game this year. Emmy's a little bit furthest away from it, but your brand new keeper coming in, the way you say his name, by the way, is Mikolai. And I just want to make sure I've got it correct here. I didn't actually write his last name down. I should have, because I think I'm not going to say that last name wrong for a while. But Mikolai coming in, he started the top, basically top division Poland games and had Danielle type stats. Super impressive. He's 21. So think of this as really opportunistic to get like a top young goalkeeper out of Europe, because Danielle's getting up in age. And I think there needs to be a healthy competition as to who steps in when Daniel's, getting to the back half of his career.
And I think it's helpful kind of to think about the way these transfers unfolded step by step, because you started this off season with Emmy, JT, and Danielle. JT's still working his way back from injury. He's not 100% yet. When we were at training, he was off, with the trainers for most of the time, not in the first team practice. So that's when you bring Yarborough in as a guy who is a very solid veteran, number 2, who is, going to be ready to step in and start if something happens to Daniel. And Daniel, had injuries last season. Daniel was not fit and available 100% of the time. So that's something that you have to be aware of and plan for. So the William Yarborough transfer made 100% sense. The surprise really was the Mikolaj transfer. Bringing in
Bagansky, by the way.
Nikolai Bagansky. Bringing him in earlier this week, that was what caught people off guard, because it's not clear where he fits in. There's a few things to think about here. One is that from everything we've heard, it was very much an opportunistic transfer. He's a guy with some of the top stats of any young keeper in Europe, and was available. So to pick him up and bring him in under what seems like a fairly sneaky good contract situation is good for the club. And you have to keep in mind that Danielle, if he keeps putting up the numbers that he's putting up, could transfer, could be getting transfer opportunities that he wants to take sometimes over the summer or the winter after that. So you want to have the depth there. You want to have the confidence that if you get $3-4 million transfer offer for Daniel that he wants to accept, that you could let him go and still have goalkeeper options.
Yeah, and for those going like, but he's going to take an international spot, the answer is he's not. I'm not sure we're allowed to go into the details as to how that's going to happen, because I don't think we understand it. But there are mechanisms here that are going to be, I think, utilized so that unless he's coming in and he's going to actually start a game on the regular roster, I don't think they have to worry about that particular situation. So I would say stay tuned on that. We're told that the international slot is not going to be an issue for him.
And it also seems like, given he's young, 21 years old, the natural place for him to start is with Quakes 2, and then to earn his way into the first
team. And I know people think he's going to rob games from Emmy, but I think the better way to think about it is they needed 2 keepers in Quakes 2 last year. What they want to do is have 2 keepers that both have the ability to be the future starting goalkeeper of the team, and that's the way that they want to approach Quakes 2. And I think that's right. I think it's smart. And I think if you don't have to use an international slot on him, and you don't have to worry too much about, the different financial elements of how that fits into the overall budget of the team. And it's more treated as a Quakes 2, loan or something like that, or however they're going to make it work. I think that's going to be, fine. I think it's a great opportunistic way to pick up a player who you can legitimately see starting for this team someday.
And this is another example of how the Quakes are actively using this new data team that they have in the recruitment process. From our conversations with Lucci, from our conversations with Jared Shawley, they were emphasizing that this was a transfer decision that was heavily informed by the data and the data recruitment program.
Just like that happened with Danielle last year. I mean, the data team proved their worth with Danielle last year, without a doubt. The Quakes are not in the playoffs. They're not even probably potentially talking about playoffs without Danielle last year. And they were able to do it because on the backs of a much better defense led by Enriquez, as well as, the goalkeeping from Danielle. And obviously JT had a rebound year until he got hurt. So he was looking much better. Credit to Aiden Brown, I think. It's funny because there's kind of a joke right now of Aiden's got his own little goalkeeper camp going, because he's got 4 goalkeepers over there now. And I said, how about a 5th? How about a 6th? And they're like, yeah, he might like that too much. So they definitely don't want to put those ideas in his head.
It doesn't hurt that you have one of the best goalkeeping coaches in Major League Soccer on this roster.
This is a good point. At the moment, Mikolaj is also only a loan, and so I think that plays into the financial treatment here that they've been talking about. And again, we don't know every single detail, and I don't even know if they're allowed to tell us every single detail. I'd be quite honest, because there's a lot about some of the stuff that goes on in MLS roster side that they don't make public, and it was kind of like I think some of this might fall into that non-public type stuff that teams have the ability to do. Keep in mind, like we talked about this a little bit before the game with a couple of people from the Quakes. Charlotte's a team who was taking international players and putting them into their second team, spending millions of dollars to do it and put them into their second team. And so I think like them doing that, at least if nothing else, raised eyebrows around the league and said, oh, is that a mechanism here that we can potentially utilize in some way, shape, or form? And so, I think there are some things that people are testing out. How the league maybe closes those loopholes in the future or anything like that, we don't know. It's also possible that the league will at some point try to shut certain types of things down that can kind of slide today and are sliding. So, we'll see how that goes over time, but it's important to note that that's all right. Mikolaj is only a loan. And then I think the treatment with Quakes 2, if I understood right, may be a loan. I'm not quite sure, again, how that's all going to work, but we'll see how it goes.
So looking forward.
Anyway, what we're told is don't worry. That's the upshot is don't worry about the international slot. Don't worry about how he fits.
There is upshot,
that makes sense.
Not a lot of downside.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Jamon, looking forward to the next, 2 preseason games that the Earthquakes have. What do you think Luchi Gonzalez should be experimenting with? This is the time of the season to experiment. We didn't see him try any new shapes today. They kept with a fairly solid 4 at the back, 2 3 in the midfield, and 3 up top. You could argue that he went with a double pivot.
Double pivot, I think, is a little bit of an experiment. I think it is. Because even Jackson sat back a little bit more in the first half. I'm not saying I wouldn't call it a double pivot. He was definitely deeper. There were times I was like, why isn't Jackson going in and taking some available space? And it might have been intentional, or it's just preseason. And, again, players are going to, kind of control. He knows he's going to go 90 minutes. He's going to kind of control his minutes out there a little bit. And know he's got to like last the whole game. But I do think specifically they are trying out kind of that double pivot with Jackson as a central playmaker, knowing that they've got some creative players on the wings between Skane and between obviously Espinoza that can add to that kind of creativity around the box. So I think there's at least experimentation there. I'm not going to say there's an answer.
Marginal.
I'm not going to say there's an answer there, but there's definitely some things they're trying out.
So the question I have is that, when we talk to Luchi Gonzalez, and talk about his game model and the way he thinks about building a team generally, he usually says that the shape is just a way of reaching their end goal, that they have the principles in each phase of play that they want to implement, and that the shape is simply the tool they use to get to that end goal and achieve those objectives, and that the shape he wants to be flexible. Given that's true, I'm surprised we haven't seen a little bit more experimentation with it in preseason. It seems like the way he's building this roster is actually like very much beholden to the 4-2-3-1 that he likes. It seems like they're building out the roster in that specific shape.
Maybe, but also consider this: if they wanted to play some 3 in the back or 5 in the back in preseason, what you're probably going to do is you're going to take players off the pitch that they want to see right now because they don't fit into that shape exactly the same way. And I think by just starting off with something that everyone understands how to play, 4 in the back, how to play either a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-1-3-1 or whatever the case is, I think everyone kind of understands those things. So they're bringing in these new players, right? So I think a lot of it is let's get on the level ground. Everyone knows how to do this, and then I think that's where you get when you get that first break where you don't play, you get the first bye of the season, so to speak. That's when usually a new wrinkle will come in. That's when you might see another formation on the other side. I think the introduction of a 3 in the back last year happened after an extended 2 weeks without a game or 10 days at least or so that there's time to actually fit that in and kind of introduce it. when you got new players coming in, like Bruno Wilson, Vitor Costa, I don't know what their experience is with those types of formations, right? And so I think it's important that we're probably putting those in, as well as making sure that you're seeing everything you want to out of the players you want to see in preseason.
Something that we heard from Bruno Wilson in an interview yesterday is that he said the game model that Lucci has and the way he's trying to play felt familiar to him.
Yeah.
And clearly they're bringing in players who are familiar with that and fit that style of play. Bruno talked a little bit about the interview process that he had with the Quakes, talking with Luchi Gonzalez and some of the other people in the front office to make sure that this is tactically, stylistically a good fit for them, that they will be able to play this system. So it seems like there is some extent to which these first few games have been getting everybody on the same page. You'll be able to hopefully integrate the new players very soon, and then the next step is to maybe introduce a little bit more variety and a little bit more experimentation. I think,
and by the way,
instinctively, I'm itching for that already. This feels like season 2. This feels like I want to see that at the outset. But Lucci, one of the things that when we talked to him, he emphasized was the continuity and the consistency in being able to return to Coachella with the routine that everyone's familiar with, that can slowly ramp up year over year. So maybe there's a sense that comes first, that you have to build those kind of foundational blocks first.
Yeah, it's also important to keep in mind that these games are streamed. And I can't overemphasize that enough, because, like I said, there's 30 minutes of play that we're not seeing right now. We're not invited to. That's closed door. And a lot of times that's where experimentation is really going to happen too. So we actually learned there's another game that they're expecting to play next week that is not publicly available. So it's possible that there's going to be things that you're not going to see publicly that they want to introduce in the first game. I think that happened last year. There was new wrinkles that were introduced. We know Matthias was famous for doing it. Matthias would try something completely different and just, then you're like, wait, he didn't show this in any of the preseason, things that we saw. And he was trying to hide stuff in preseason too. So there's that. But I think there is a bit of gamesmanship here going on of like, let's show some public stuff and let's do some streaming and get the fan engagement. I think they really like that at Coachella. It's definitely grown this year, the experience. We should talk about that a little bit more for the fans here. But the experience is growing, and they want to make it a fan event. But at the same time, like, they still want to keep some cards close to the vest.
And we do know that Lucci is experimenting with things that we are not supposed to know about.
Right.
At training that we were at yesterday, Lucci came over and welcomed us and told us, we're happy to have you here, and we're going to kick you out for our last training session because we're going to be experimenting, which was not the case last year.
They're working on tactical things, and you can't be here for tactical.
That was when we were here last year. They were not working on any new experimental things that we weren't allowed to see. So there is new potential surprises.
That was the third game. I'm not sure.
So there's a TBD element of this that I think we have to wait and see.
I think we have to wait and see. And even if it's not obvious to us, like, Lucci prides himself in having different pressing schemes and things like that. So I think there's always going to be like, hey, we're going to set up our press this way and play this particular style, and then we're going to change these things. And maybe that's less obvious, to us at this point.
Well, it definitely was different with Jack and Jabo each pressing the center backs. That was definitely new.
Well, the other thing that's kind of interesting about that is because Jack was playing on the right side. He was pressing on the right side, and when you think about what spot is he taking in the lineup right now, he's really taking the one that was occupied by Jamiro Montero, which is really more on the left half space. So, I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, if Jamiro's not there in that left half space, what does that mean in terms of Jackson's spot? What does that mean in terms of Jack's spot? And then, when Alfredo comes in, how does that change who's occupying the different spaces? So, I do think these things the central midfield is for sure changing. How much we will say game one, it's obvious that it changed, I think is a wait and see, because a lot of it, I think, is determined on the player's skill and kind of their natural abilities.
So I want to return to the experience here at Coachella and talk about that a little bit, because
I think that's important.
As Jamon mentioned, it feels like it's growing. It feels like this is a bigger preseason event than it was last year. There are more fans here than there were last year. There are more clubs here than there were last year. I think teams are kind of buying into the concept of a large preseason camp. They're more familiar with the routine and the structure of this event. It feels like it's growing.
Where else can you just walk right by Phil Neville? Just like he's just standing there and you're just walking right by him.
Possibly Manchester.
Players are
Possibly
gathered.
Downtown Manchester.
Players are gathered, sharing the bathroom with Aseni Buddha right before the game. These are experiences you can't get anywhere else, right? No, it's really interesting. And we were talking to one of the organizers here that actually comes from Major League Baseball and has helped organize their preseason, which is a huge event, right? And it brings fans from all over into Arizona and Florida as a huge fan events for preseason baseball. And she was kind of commenting to us a little bit on how nice the facility is, how really amazing place to be able to do it, that they've added more stands this year, more games I think are available to the public. There's merchandise this year, there's better food options this year, so they really are investing in growing the event. And I just want to say we were treated so well by the people today, making sure we had this spot set up for us. It was organized in advance. Somebody removed it and they helped us get it put back because someone, I guess, didn't get the memo. We were supposed to be able to have this area, but everyone has been amazing to work with, both here at the facility and within the earthquakes, the support that we've got. And we love, the team that we worked with last year as well. But now it's the two Ryans that we've got in PR. They've been amazing. The front office, unfortunately, Chris Leach having to leave early, but the time that we got to spend with people like Jared, Brett Carlene today for a bit, and then Lucci, yesterday, and then the communication staff and everyone has been utmost professional. Well done to everyone. Thank you so much for making this an amazing event, not just for us, but allowing us to do what we do and supporting us every step to make sure that we can deliver great content to all of you.
And for fans, I think it's a fun experience as well, because as you can see, there's a game going on behind us right now.
You're getting a free stream right now.
The Portland Timbers in New York City FC. That's why we're blocking it with our bodies. There might be some international players without their visas on the field right now. I
don't know. Glenn Crooks is calling this game, so I'm pretty sure this one's streamed too.
But it's a unique experience to be able to watch games back to back each day, to be able to hang out with people from the front office in the stands and interact with all the families that are here. I think something that we heard is that more players are bringing their families to this tournament now.
A lot more fans, Quakes fans all over the stands today. Some of those families, some of those are new fans that are experiencing it for the first time.
Yeah, so it's definitely a bigger event this year. And
Tom Bogert just sitting in the stands, by the way.
We look forward to.
You could have just Tom was sitting by himself. I'm like, why isn't anyone just going out and introducing themselves and hanging out with Tom? Like, it looks like you could use someone to sit by him. But we got to compete our voices. So if you listen to the interviews that we're posting for the patrons this week, by the way, everything will get into YouTube next week, but patrons get early access to all these videos. You'll hear maybe Tom Bogert in the background. Our voices were competing in the same ballroom with Tom's and another crew who was talking with Aseni Buddha and Carlos Acapo after that, right? I think so. And so there was other interviews going on in the room. Last year, it was just us. And we were like hidden away in like the coach's video room and having these conversations. And this year, here's a ballroom and there's other conversations going on and there's more media presence. We walked to the media tent. There's a stack of credentials this year, like a lot more people attending the event. So it's a great event. If you're looking for the opportunity maybe to try out MLS preseason, we can't recommend it enough. And coming, I think this weekend is cheaper than the President's Day weekend. So maybe the earlier weekend, if it's a little bit more affordable for some people.
And we are very grateful to be here. Obviously, we are able to be here because of our Patreon supporters and everyone who contributes to Quakes Epicenter in this Aftershock show. So if you would like to be able to help get us out here next year as well for more earthquakes coverage, we'd really appreciate it if you could join the Patreon. The link is in the description. We are so grateful for the wonderful community of patrons that we have. We're going to be able to connect with a few of them who are here after this episode. And it's always a great event as well to be able to connect with some fans and other people in the community.
We'll both be there. So Alex, by the way, is back in college in Southern California. for those of you who don't know, I am actually located these days up near Tacoma, but we will both be there for game 1 of the season. So, certainly look for us. I think last year got to stop by a couple of the supporters, pre-game festivities, and get to meet some people out there. Would love to meet you, whether you're in a supporters group or not. I think there's a lot of people are welcomed in to come in, so definitely let us know. And John Jay,
wow,
first,
look at this!
The first
John Jay beat us to
contribution. Yes, you can now donate if you like, over the stream through the YouTube. Thank you, John Jay. And of course, we've got our Patreon. You subscribe to that, you get early access to 5 interviews that we did yesterday, 3 players, 2 front office, but we're very excited.
So Kylan here was saying that we passed 1K subscribers.
Yeah, well,
there was also a question about Cade. All these three comments in a row are actually all interconnected. First, Cade got signed by Chivas, scored his first 2 goals in the international match that they had against I think somewhat suspect defense.
It's Forge FC, Canadian Premier League. You make your own judgment.
But he was able to get 2 goals in the back of the net in one game. So that's a confidence booster for Cade. I know everyone around the Earthquakes Club was excited to see him score those goals.
Congrats to Cade.
When we were talking to Lucci, we asked Lucci about.
Oh, we don't want to be a political show, so I'm not sure we want to talk about right wing here.
We asked Lucci about what it was like to see Cade, go to Chivas and immediately be bombarded with all the press following his limousine to the club and to the medical. People camping outside the hotel to meet him. And the interesting thing that Lucci said was that it felt natural. It felt natural that Cade was ready for that spotlight. He was ready for that limelight and for that moment. And so to see him get 2 goals is a good sign that that's it's the right step in his career, and it's a good moment for him. But Cade moving was what we needed to get over to that 1K subscriber mark. So we're very grateful for all of our new subscribers.
6,200 or so views on the last video. For some reason, you were living under a rock and missed that episode. Help push us to 6,300 or whatever the next milestone actually could be there. But, I think we have to also give some thanks to Chivas supporters who definitely were looking for information, scouring YouTube and the internet for anything they could find on Cade Cowell that week. He was the most popular man in Mexico for about a week there.
The good news is that we are still relevant for Chivas fans because of the Leagues Cup draw.
That's true.
And because Chivas fans
will
be tuning in to watch Chivas play the Earthquakes, potentially at Levi Stadium, as it seems like where they're going to host their home game.
And we could not get that confirmed. That's a rumor, by the way. But what is true and what is announced is that the top 4 Liga MX teams from last year in Leagues Cup, and that includes Chivas, they get to pick a base this year. So it's one of the changes to Leagues Cup. Chivas being one of those teams, there's a rumor at least that base will be NorCal instead of SoCal, and we will see. Not sure when that's going to get announced or if the rumors are true, but it's exciting to think that there might be a game between the Earthquakes and Chivas in the Bay Area where everyone can just heading over to a different place, not PayPal Park, but be able to see Cade and Chivas take on the San Jose Earthquakes in a meaningful game.
It'll be a big one. There'll be lots of Cade Cowell Chivas jerseys there, I anticipate.
Not quite a draw for Leagues Cup this year. Kind of a meticulously planned allocation
against the Galaxy as well.
Of attempted fairness in the league. By the way, the Earthquakes, by finishing ahead of the Galaxy, actually get the home game versus the Galaxy, and that is the good news.
It is a tough group, though. It is
tough.
I think comparatively, it's a tougher group.
I think the Galaxy will be better this year too.
Yeah.
So that will be a tough game.
Anyways, the other thing that the 1K subscribers means is that you get a bunch of fancy new tools. Richie just found the fancy new tools as well.
As soon as we get these new tools, we definitely want to say thank you, Richie, for the additional money. I don't know how long people will just put additional money on here for. Probably won't be a big revenue stream for us.
If there's something,
certainly make sure that you subscribe to the Patreon first and foremost, because additional benefits come your way from doing that. But yes, if you want to donate through the stream, we also appreciate that as well.
And if there's something on the live stream that you want to bring us, that you want to bring up, that you want to get in front of us on screen, if you hit us with one of those green super chats, we will make sure to talk about it and to answer your questions and to
priority
get you up on the
to those who donate through the super chats. Absolutely.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's a benefit for all of you. Obviously, you get some cool new gizmos. I don't know that we share them.
I think there's other
some of them work as well. Some of them work, some of them don't in our tooling, and we are looking at new tools. It might be the tool, but I don't think so. I think like the tools seem kind of similar in this regard. But at least everybody else gets to see what
Andy
you're
found the sticker
in the live chat.
So I can't see what Andy's sticker is.
We can't see the sticker. That's one of the things. But everyone else can see your sticker, Andy. So thank you for the 99 cents.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we've got about 50 minutes here. I want to see some of the fans who are still around. We've got to get me to the airport. Alex is driving me back on his way back to his college campus. And, it's been great to hang out with you for a couple days. It's sad it's actually come to an end. Like, I look forward to this for such a long time. And this year, last year, we had so many people step up and just donate extra money to send us. My recollection is that it was something like $700 or $800. The airfare was exorbitant last year because it was due. Pass the hat to improve the audio in the wind. That's a whole nother story as to why we don't have a microphone here in front right now.
Let's just say
Alex and I
drove all around Coachella Valley this
morning trying to solve the microphone problem. So we're using Alex's microphone for sure. But that'll be one of the things. We just need a USB dongle. It's actually shouldn't be that hard. Somehow hard to find around here. But last year so many people stepped up to send us to this event, and we got to experience how amazing it was. We saved the money up from your patronage over the year to be able to come here and not have to pass the collection hat again. So thank you, all of you, for being patrons. If you're not, $2 gets you in. Some new articles are going to be coming as well. We're trying to get a couple new writers to join the team to do more articles this season. My first preseason article I'm expecting in the next week. I might have 2 out this preseason, so looking forward to kind of getting into the swing of things.
And this is preseason for us too, so if we said anything stupid on the show, you got to give us a break. It's the same thing as Danielle accidentally gifting the ball in front of goal to the Charlotte FC striker. Even Danielle, who we know is safe and sound back there, I make a mistake or two.
So we're just going to imagine red number 1 and what that looks like, right? So, because that's what we're getting through here on our particular part of the chat.
But it's a pleasure to be here as always. It was also good this year because the Quakes announced a lot of new signings right before this tournament. In the week before the tournament, there was back-to-back.
You get here and you get to see them.
With Vitor, Pellegrino, and Mikolai. To be able to see them, talk to them,
and Bruno Wilson,
and to understand how this roster is coming together, I think is really important for us as well. And watching that game emphasized to me just how important those new pieces are going to be to take the team to the next level. I think today we only saw the base 2023 San Jose Earthquakes and still have a lot to look forward to. Don't worry, there'll be more worldies coming for the rest of this season.
Right. Let's hope Paul Marie didn't use one up in that last game, because that was quite a banger there.
Now, Paul Marie's got more worldies up his sleeve. We know that for sure. But with that said, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Look forward to seeing all of you back in San Jose for our next Aftershock postgame show after San Jose's opener.
Well, first there's a road opener. So we will have a show following the first game of the season. But yes, we will be in San Jose, obviously, for that home opener against the Galaxy at PayPal Park. And there's something always special in the Cali Clasico, but I'm really looking forward to that. Maybe we will get an opportunity to be on the field again. I think there's conversations. The field, the bar, we're going to try to do something special. So also look for us after the game, the Aftershock live around the stadium somewhere. But once we know, we will announce where we're going to be. Definitely stop by and cheer us on, say hi, anything you want to do.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.